Well, hello everyone, and congratulations for getting here. I'm very excited to read about and hear about some of the work that you've all been doing. I also want to thank NASA and JPL for hosting us today. It's kind of awe-inspiring. Somebody who grew up watching the space program to be at this place. And also State Department, USAID, and who we share space with back in Washington, D.C., and Nike for the sponsorship and bringing this kind of talent together. You know, you guys may know this, but there's a little known fact about EPA. You know, we have over 5,000 scientists at EPA. We can't compete with NASA, but we're not that far away. And so we really have that kindred spirit with our sister and brother agencies that are in the science realm, and certainly NASA is one of them. And you know, we have a new administrator at EPA, Gina McCarthy, who's in another part of the country today, so we're scattered about. But she and I have really been pushing the agency toward thinking of sustainability concepts. And this is a pretty important frontier for us at EPA. The laws that were created in the 1970s to clean up massive amounts of pollution in the United States, and you see some of this in other parts of the world now, and they're actually trying to catch up and learn from us. But those tools have done an amazing job. Air pollution is down 70%, aggregately in the United States. Sewage treatment plants are all treating sewage as opposed to just dumping it. It isn't that we don't have tremendous problems, but we've solved and we've moved forward on a lot of them. So we have a huge plateau, a huge foundation of good work. But when you start thinking about where we need to go next, we can't use those tools the same way to change the way clothing is made, to change the way packaging happens at a store. I always like to use the earbud idea that, most of us probably have those little things that you stick in your ear called earbuds, and you probably remember buying it in a big thing that was hermetically sealed. And well, that's a theft protection rationale, and it has plastic and paper and lots of materials just to deliver those the barcode to the cash register. So, thinking about that isn't something EPA is going to be able to, nor would I want to see it regulate that. But we at EPA, with our science focus and our credibility, can work with communities and entrepreneurs and innovators to see how we can move forward in some of that work. And so sustainability and how we can change the way packaging is done or the way materials are constructed and how we reuse things. And sustainability is often, people at the agency who are, remember, it's that uncomfortable interface between science and law. There's a lot of what is sustainability? Why should we be thinking about it? And you start to try to define it not in a regulatory sense, but in a directional sense. It's a direction, it's a continuum that we must be on, as occupants of the earth. We need to get to the point where we can see our systems, both social, economic, and ecological, to be sustainable. And you can almost look at the simple words that were in the National Environmental Policy Act that was enacted by Congress in 1969 or 70, where it talks about humans living in harmony with the environment. And so these concepts are easy to grasp at that high level. They're not that easy to figure out where we are on that continuum and how do you move down that continuum. And this is where you guys come in. You guys come in where you're looking at ways to move us down that continuum. How do we get further down? How do we, and some of the winning innovations, looking at high-tech products from renewable materials. Obviously, that's part of moving down the continuum. You transform products that are no longer used into new feedstocks for other products. Evaluate the environmental impact of the materials we use. And products and textiles that protect us or that are made with different kinds of materials, or that even can possibly generate power themselves. It's really remarkable, some of the work that's been going on, and it falls right into this sustainability thrust that EPA is developing. And one of the areas we're looking at is sustainable materials management. That's a paradigm shift for us. We used to work really hard to make sure that when we disposed of things in a landfill, it was properly protected with a liner, that it was covered every day to make sure gases or pests didn't get in there. I mean, that's what we were doing, 40 years ago. What we want to do now is keep stuff out of the landfill altogether so that it's reused or repurposed or some other approach. So this is a paradigm shift for EPA and all the other waste management industries in the country. And you guys are certainly looking at things that can help move that along. And Launch at its core, and the challenge we're talking about here, is really getting at some of the essence of that kind of thinking. And if I look at greenhouse gases, and I think most of you know that the President put out in June an action plan for the United States to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, also prepare for the impacts of climate change, and then also leverage all of that in the international community so that we can build up an stronger international consensus, but being in a stronger position that we have a stronger domestic program. Well, materials and greenhouse gas emissions resulting from materials use, manufacture, movement in the United States account for 40% of our carbon pollution in this country. Now you'll say, oh, it's cars and it's the power plants. Of course it is, but the making of, the movement of materials, if you look at that as an aggregate cross-cutting function, account for quite a bit of the pollution. So at the federal government, we're also looking at our buying power. We buy a lot of stuff in the federal government, billions and billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of materials every year. We're looking at how we can change our purchasing guidelines so that we would be preferring more sustainable products. And we've pushed some of that already at some low scale, but even at that low scale, like last year, we diverted 360,000 tons of materials from going to landfills. And just by doing that simple thing, we prevented 900,000 metric tons of carbon pollution. And we saved the federal government $31 million. Not, we got a $3 trillion budget, or maybe we don't. Who knows? But the bottom line here is very important because not only are we repurposing and reducing waste, which is virtuous to an extent in itself, but we're also reducing pollution and we're saving money. It's like that win-win-win thing you always look for, and that's what materials management and thinking of innovation, green chemistry, all of these concepts that we're working on are important. So EPA, this is a pretty important thrust that society is doing. And not only is it important because of all that I just said, just using that simple example, but we also expect that this is going to create new thrusts in our economy. There are going to be jobs around this. There's going to be new ways to think of products and how to manufacture products. And all of that is going to create jobs and opportunity in our country, and that's going to be really important. We like to think that EPA has stimulated a lot of that already, and we haven't really been thinking about how to do that. Things like a catalytic converter, which are now used everywhere in the world, started here, I want to say almost in a garage in a place in New Jersey. And now they're ubiquitous around the world. Some of the companies that are involved with this have been sold, for billions of dollars. And of course, there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world that, in one way or another, have the job associated with pollution control on vehicles. So we didn't set out when we started trying to reduce the pollution from automobiles to think about the technology innovation. But now, when you go to buy a car, you have all these different choices. And our new greenhouse gas emission standards for cars between now and 2025 are going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from light-duty vehicles in the country by 50%, which on the other side means you're going to use 50% less gasoline to drive them. And new jobs are being created to create the technology that goes into those automobiles, the materials that are used in those automobiles. And so you can see how all this works together. You probably know this better than I, but what I want you to know is how important it is to an agency like EPA and how linked your work and your thinking is to the future of where environmental and resource management needs to go in this country and in the world. And so we want to be swimming with the flow here of the rivers of innovation, and whether it's clean energy, clean buildings, resource conservation, the change that has occurred in the last 10 years in these arenas is really remarkable. Anybody here has ever read Alvin Toffler? It's sort of like future shock in spades. It's just going at an accelerated pace, and things build on top of each other. So I want to congratulate you for the work you've done. I want to thank again the sponsors so much. And I'm happy to give this little bit of how important it is and how important it is to the future of what EPA will be able to do and what our society will be able to do. So I want you to keep on. I want you to keep going. And I'm just in awe to be here with you and the work that you've already done. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of this. Thanks.